Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. We're having a discussion on how context switching impacts team productivity and strategies for how developers can avoid unnecessary interruptions. So this is a lead dev webinar created in partnership with Incident IO. The webinar will be about 45 minutes, after which both myself and the panelists will head over to the lead dev Slack to answer some of your questions, and that will be in the Effective Teams channel, so make sure you join that. We may also have some time to answer a couple questions live, so please do submit those through the Q&A feature on Zoom, and we'll get to them if we can towards the end. So I want to get started with some introductions. First, my name is Nejla. I'll be your moderator today, calling you from New Jersey. And most recently, I was a director of engineering at Etsy based in Mexico City. Post layoff, though, I've been deeply enjoying some of my free time from the corporate world. And then just this week, I accepted a job offer in Berlin. So that's exciting. I will share details publicly once it's closer to the date. I'm joined by some awesome engineering leaders on the panel today who are ready to share their experiences and insights. So let's get started with some intros, starting with Kara.
Sure. Awesome. I'm so excited to be here. So I'm Kara Marin. I'm calling in from Durham, North Carolina. And my background is in software engineering, but now I'm co-founder and CEO at a startup called StashPad. And we make a minimal Google Docs alternative that has Markdown support and doesn't require an account to use. So basically, if you're a developer that loves writing in Markdown, you can write in Markdown in StashPad and your non-technical collaborators won't notice. So that's the magic. I'm really, really excited about this topic. To me, context switching isn't just about being more productive, and I've gone kind of geeky academic on it. It's about actually enjoying your work more when you can manage context switching better. So excited to dive in.
Chris?
Hi everyone, I'm Chris. I am calling from London, and right now I'm engineering manager at Incident IO. I'm excited to share my own experience from my time as an IC to my time as a manager, but also learn from all the other panelists and see what their perspective on context switching is.
Rin?
Hi, everyone. I'm Rin. I'm dialing in from Helsinki, Finland. I am the tech lead of the cloud platform team at Mapbox, and I've been working in operations for 15 plus years. It's a very interrupt-driven sort of job. And so I think in an increasingly interrupt-filled world, I think it's really important to have strategies to be able to minimize the impact of that. So I'm also really excited to talk with everyone today.
Thank you. And Amador.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amador, calling in this case from Barcelona. Actually, I'm working as a senior engineering manager at Amenities, hotels software in company. And I'm really excited also as my colleagues to have the chance of sharing about this issue that affects everyone in our industry somehow. No matter if you're an individual contributor or manager, you will see it later. But yeah, pretty excited to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So I'm also very excited to dig into this topic. It comes up at every level, like between in one-on-ones between managers and engineers, between engineers and other engineers, when teams are discussing process. And even at my last job, it came up at the company level where we had things like no meeting Fridays to avoid like meeting interruptions. So we have folks, I think actually pretty much everyone on this panel has both IC experience and management experience. So we'll get to hear a few different perspectives, which is great. So first, I want to define context switching. What are some examples of context switching that you've seen on your teams, and what is the impact? And this question is for everyone. You can start with Rin, maybe.
Yeah, I think the biggest example, like especially from my own experience, is you're on call, you're doing something and you get paged. Pager duty says, hi, hello, the system is down, time to do something else. Or somebody drops into your Slack channel with a question and you want to help out. So you have to stop what you're doing, switch context to something else. And then when you're done with whatever that interrupt is, try and get back into what you were doing before. And I think there's research that shows that it takes 15, 20 minutes for your brain to get back into the groove of what you were doing when you get interrupted. So obviously there's, that cost there associated with that.
Amador?
I'd add just to, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No, please jump
I
in.
love that starting point, Rin, and I'd add just kind of a slightly geeky framing of it, that context switching is actually a two-step process. So the first thing is you decide, okay, there's this message that came in Slack or this incident going on. I'm going to decide to take on that. And then the second thing is what's called like rule activation. And so basically you take on the rules of that thing that you're switching to. So in the case of like coding to a meeting, you'll close your code editor, open your video conferencing app, fix your hair, whatever. And so you take on the rules. And so I think it's kind of cool when you think about it in those two steps to think about how you can, from the IC perspective, minimize context switching by trying to lessen, but only do one step when possible, I guess.
Yeah, I think like this obviously looks different in some ways and similar in others for both ICs and managers. I think Ridden touched on definitely a few things. You're in the middle of a problem, you get a ping on Slack, there's an incident that's raised, you get a page and having to follow multiple different threads and jump between them. And as a manager, it could look like having lots of different one-to-ones throughout the day that are completely different topic-wise, or jumping from talking about hiring to jumping around about talking about culture, lots of different things, and having to change your thought process or follow different threads, quickly, one after another.
So yeah, as all of you already said, right, is about the mental shift. So it's even about a part of these interruptions that come from outside. Sometimes it's even us trying to do many things at a time with the best intention, but it is really demonstrated as you were mentioning, Rin. In fact, the study says about 28 minutes to switch between contexts, which is huge. Yeah, even is us trying to tackle many things, and we are not. There are some roles that probably is more expected, like us, like managers, like doing these one-on-ones and an interview for hiring, whatever. Is it supposed to be that way? But yeah, for the teams that are dedicated to a concrete task, roadmap, and so on, of course, is an issue.
So, as an individual contributor, is there an acceptable amount of context switching, and what like strategies would you have to keep that manageable? At what point does it become a problem? I want to start with Rin on this question because your job is most IC related right now, but I think anyone can add on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we all want to say the ideal amount of context switching or interrupts is as low as possible, but obviously we don't live in a perfect world. I think when it starts to become a problem for me is when I start to feel like I'm not actually getting anything done during the day, like I'm falling behind on responsibilities, or I just feel completely frazzled and melted down and disappearing into a puddle of ADHD demons by the end of the day because I just can't keep track of what I'm doing at any given time. So I think there's individual strategies that like I as an individual can use to try and keep things manageable, blocking out calendar time or various other time management strategies. But I think there's also a larger cultural context where if your team is one in which context switching and interruptions are the norm, it's going to be hard as an individual to fight against that. So I'm definitely excited for us talking more about those kind of two prongs of strategies there.
Anything to
Yeah, I
add from
think
the ice?
it's
Go ahead, Chris.
sorry, yeah, I think
Yeah,
it definitely an acceptable level varies, right, from person to person. It could also vary based on like the thing that you're working on and the complexity of that thing. Things that are minimal complexity or low effort, it's probably easier to jump back and forth in between them. But if you're working on something complex that you sort of created this map in your head as you're going through trying to solve this problem, looking at different parts of the code base, looking at customer feedback, all these little things, only then to get pulled out of it and then having to find your way back in. So I think it like same for managers and individual contributors, when you start to miss maybe goals that you've set for yourself, or you realize, oh, the quality of what I'm doing could have been a lot higher had I time to focus on it. And I think that at that level, that's the signal to say, oh, this is probably happening too often.
Yeah, I'd add just quickly to what Bryn and Chris already really touched on, but I feel like for me personally, and also for my team, when I start seeing people say, oh, I didn't have any time today to work, and so then I see code commits at 10 p.m., that's when you're like, what's going on here? Because we're working and maybe the priorities aren't clear. So that's definitely like the biggest signal to me that there's an issue to address.
One of the things that, according to me, can reduce that amount of time that we need for those context switching is try to cluster similar tasks so that the time for switching within them should be shorter as time strategies, as you mentioned already. And also communication is about making others know that you are on focus time and you need to not be disturbed. I mean, without being rude, but still people needs to know that you need to be focused, right?
Yeah, and I think we're transitioning into this next question anyway, which is, as a manager, then like how do you know that there's a problem on your team as a whole? So when you're looking at it, what are key signals across the board? I think we already mentioned things like we're missing deadlines, quality is low, the engineers on the team are not calling the work that they're doing work. They're saying they didn't have time for their actual work. So, and then what do you do once you are seeing those signals and you know something has to change? Do you want to start, Amador? Yeah, go ahead.
Amador, you can.
No, please.
Okay, I'll start. I think the signals like we talked about, like story points not getting done because there's kind of all this unscheduled work happening, and I think that's a sign as a manager that you may want to consider some of the like clustering meetings together and really just asking your developers what would be helpful to them because they have the best ideas. And then something I'll say, just like putting on my IC hat, that I found is really helpful when I do have, everyone's going to have some element of context switching in their job, is to do something called writing a status dump. So basically, when you finish a task and you have to switch to something else, to quickly write down what you just did, what's next, and any like kind of like context you would otherwise hold on in your brain. And then for me, that lets me like bring my attention more fully to the next thing because I'm not like ruminating about the past one. So just another strategy to throw in there.
Really interesting, kind of a brain dump, right? Before just going to the next topic for ensure that nothing remains there yep. Yes, so missed deadlines, code quality issues, low morale. I think sometimes we can identify it by low morale. And for us, then it's important to take action as soon as possible, as soon as we detect it, like reviewing how the workflows are. So maybe it's about the way that we are, the ways of working that we're establishing maybe are not the best, like these ceremonies that we are putting maybe in the middle of the morning, that is just interrupting people from doing their own rhythm, right? Helping them to prioritize tasks. Some of the reasons behind the multitasking is that people is not really able to determine which is the highest priority, and then try to decide to go to everything at a time, and this can also affect to that, and also try to as much as we can try to embrace async communication, right? So try to make them the communication just when they have a while, or as you were saying, Kara, when they are switching within them is the moment to spend a while answering Slack or whatever they have to do.
Yeah, I think something that's helped me in like identifying if and when this is becoming a problem with the team is really getting to know the people on the team as well as I can and building close relationships with them as a team, but also individually, because there's going to be some people that may not feel comfortable raising things. They feel like they're missing goals or missing the things that they've said they're going to do. And you can kind of work out, oh, that's out of character for this person on my team. I should probably check in with them and see if maybe they have some other things on their plate that they haven't quite raised. But also trying to make sure you create a safe environment for people to like vocalize what they're working on, why they didn't get to something maybe they said they wanted to get to, and encouraging people to be more open about it. Especially as a manager, like you have things going on, you're also context switching and sort of, opening that conversation up means that people feel more comfortable asking for help or saying, I didn't get this done because these other things came up, rather than kind of seeing it as a bad thing. It's going to be unavoidable for a lot of us to have to context switch day to day, and sort of being having a safe space to kind of bring those up, or knowing your team really well to know when something isn't quite right, that you can then check in on.
Yeah,
I think the idea of people feeling or not feeling comfortable speaking up is a really important one. And I think that's an area where either as senior ICs or as managers, it's kind of our responsibility to lead by example. Because if you have, more junior engineers on the team who, maybe this is their first job out of college, they don't really know the industry norms yet. And they come in and they see people, writing their commit messages at 10 p.m. and working all hours of the night, and responding to Slack within 30 seconds, no matter what time of day, or if they said they were on vacation, they're going to kind of internalize those as normal, as what's expected of them. And I think if we want to create a culture that is less interrupt driven, that has a better balance, that we need to, the people who are going to be kind of the leaders in the organization need to be aware of what we're doing and how it might be perceived by other people, make sure that we're setting good examples for everyone around us.
Yeah, so as usual, like the discussion inevitably goes to the human side of things, like and how we need to like take care of people. So just like diving into that a bit more, if gone unchecked, like all this like interrupt culture, what is the impact on a team's culture? Like what are some things that can happen, or to look out for?
I think people are going to burn out, and it's going to be really obvious. They're going to burn out, they're going to quit because it's not sustainable. And so I think taking the measures that Rin was saying to set an example and establish a culture that's sustainable and effective is really important.
Also, I think it affects to accountability, right? When we are not able, or we have the sensation that we cannot get to everything, we tend to reduce the ownership, because we want to ensure that it happens, but we are not feeling that we are able to manage it. So we try to keep the accountability ahead of us, right?
Yeah, I think it's burnout, like you said, Karen. I think it's just the normalization of this is just the way things are, like the sort of like the boiling frog, boiling lobster, whichever animal is being boiled. You just get used to the fact that everything is on fire all the time. So it can be really useful when you have, a new person join the team who can be like, hey, are we always, running around jumping between tasks all the time? And to be able to point out the things that like those who have been there for longer might have missed, just because it becomes so ingrained that these are the habits, these are the way things are. So I think it is really important to, be aware of that, and like we've been talking about, try and make it safe for people, whether they're old or new, to raise these issues when they see them.
Yeah, I think like other kind of impacts on culture, feeling like the team's unproductive, or at least people feeling like they're not as productive as they could be. They're not accomplishing things. Ultimately, that's what people want. They want to feel like they're making an impact, and being proactive rather than reactive, and slipping into that with too much context switching. A team, can lose motivation. They're just now not here to have the impact they wanted, just to get all the things done and put out lots of fires, or change context all the time. And that's really demotivating, and, definitely, like we've said, will lead to feeling overwhelmed. And especially as a manager, you should be able to sense that, hopefully before it gets to that point on your team.
I would say that even at production level, it can affect also, because we know that if we don't have and it comes again with the process, right? If we don't have the right channels to be interrupted somehow, if everybody's pinging us on every single channel, we know that our individual contributors are just muting the channels, and maybe they are gonna lack something that is really important and has to be tackled, because of they are tired to get notifications or direct requests through an undesired channel. So it also can affect to communication breakdowns at the end.
Great. No, I'm still kind of laughing at what Rin said around like the new person that comes in and is like, what's happening? I've been on both sides of that. They're both uncomfortable and both necessary. So um, let's talk about incidents specifically. Everybody's touched on them. We love incidents. How do you create an incident management process that still allows the team to move forward with their day-to-day product or technical work? I want to start with Chris on this.
Well, obviously, you get a tool that helps you remove all the chaos from incident management. But some things that we kind of do here, like, and I've seen this at lots of companies, we definitely carve out like a space for these things to happen. So we have a rotating role between teams that this is the expectation of that person or that small team of people is to be reactive. They are the ones who are responding to incidents, and it's definitely a space where you can expect to have to switch context, and that allows the rest of your team or other people to sort of carry on and have a lot more focus on the things that they're working on. And I think this like works really well. I've seen it in different organizations, but it also means that those people can respond to customers a lot faster, which customers will love if you get back to them on an issue or an incident quickly rather than sort of it getting lost in the shuffle of everything that's going on. And then because it's part of the expectation, I feel like the pressure is kind of off. And so, I'm going to have to switch things. Everyone knows that that's what I'm doing. And if needed, you can pull on your team if things get to a certain point. So we've definitely found a lot of success there from doing that as like a small engineering team up to doing it more team-based. So that way anyone in that role has a lot of context over the part of the platform that they own or they work on, which helps. And you can sort of count on them to be the interruptible person on the team. So if something comes in, you can give it to that person rather than it sort of throwing other things or other projects kind of out of whack. So that's one thing that we do here that I think works.
Amador.
I was waiting for you to introduce. Uh, as sorry, just joking. So as Chris mentioned, right, it also comes with a clear escalation path. One of the ways that we have to do it is we call this. We also have this role, Chris. By the way, in our squads we call it the firefighter. It is set on a weekly cadence, I guess, and it's on round robin. And by the way, this practice is really a good opportunity for people to learn inside the squad because we are expecting this person to be in charge of trying to fix everything by his or her own. But if not, they can just pair with the person who has the answer and learn from the next time to be more autonomous and learn. So it's a super measure and it's pretty effective as well as documenting well the procedures. Everybody needs to know, not only us receiving the request, but also the people which is reporting that, which is the right way to report to us. What do we need in order to tackle it? So which are the conditions to be reproduced? If you can bring us captures, all of these things. The most information we have from scratch, we will avoid interacting with them a lot of times just to retrieve all the information needed for tackling it.
I love the point you made, Amador, about when you're on call, even if you don't have the knowledge, you then get to learn by pairing with the person who does have the knowledge. And I just wanted to add some things because I think we all have been on teams where there's the like more experienced developer that knows how to do everything. And then whenever there's an incident, they're essentially on call, even though they weren't supposed to be on call. And so just a couple of things I've seen that have worked pretty well there is first, whenever you do have an incident, make sure that that person is like explaining what happened and doing a full walkthrough just to kind of like get that first pass through. A second thing is if there are certain parts of the code base that are more likely to be causing an incident, don't have that person write the code changes when it's time to do new features touching it. Instead, let someone else do it because they'll get a deeper experience with that code base than just reviewing the code themselves. And then the last thing is, I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but I found it really fun to do like chaos days where basically that person who has all the knowledge just says, okay, this is broken, fix it. And you just kind of have practice dry runs with the rest of the team, trying to identify what went wrong and just getting more comfortable in the process.
Yeah, I think just both of you mentioned like knowledge sharing is really important here. It helps reduce the amount of time it takes to then switch context. If you know something, anything about the problem you're trying to solve, and those more senior engineers who do have lots of context, they've worked on all parts of the platform, they've been at the company a while, encouraging them to do more of that, or like you say, pair with other people, get other people to solve the problem while you help them or pair with them. I think can help. It doesn't remove it entirely, but it certainly makes it easier the next time something similar comes up. People aren't starting from zero. They have some base to start solving whatever problem they're facing.
So when we do get an incident, how do you decide if it's worth interrupting either your own work or other people's work, and what are the trade-offs that you're willing to make? Rin?
I think the biggest thing that I look for is like what is the scope? What is the impact of the incoming thing? Like, and is there a workaround? Like, is it one person with a like, hey, when you have time, I've got a question on X, Y, and Z, or is it PagerDuty saying that some production thing is on fire? Because one of those things I'm going to pay a lot more attention to. It's, whoever it is that has a question can wait until I've, finished up the immediate task at hand. So I think it can be really important to make sure as a team that you are, I guess, able to be reliable, that people can trust you to respond kind of in a timely manner based on the relative importance. Because I think if people don't think that they can trust you, then they'll start escalating everything. Everything becomes an emergency, and you'll start getting pages for emergency things that aren't actually emergencies because the trust has broken down. People don't feel like they're going to get their questions answered or themselves unblocked any other way. So like, I know that, even jumping into Slack to answer a question is a bit of a context switch. But if I can just do that and be like, yeah, like how pressing is this? Like, do you have something that you can work on in the meantime? And then based on the answer, I'll decide if I'm going to go help them right now or if they can wait until, whatever it is that I'm done with. And I think if you can build up that trust as an organization, it can go a long way towards making sure that like people aren't, setting things on fire just to try and get a simple question answered.
I really love your point, Rin, of taking the time in Slack to like acknowledge what has been asked and set the expectation. Is it okay if I get back to you tomorrow? And I think that makes it really like that. I wouldn't even call it over communication. That clear communication makes a really big difference in building trust and in making it easier for people to know. To know, oh, this is worth escalating, or hey, Rin already told me she's going to get to this tomorrow, and that's fine with me. And so I kind of have that act. I also think it's a pretty interesting, like I think the second part of your question was around what are the trade-offs that you're willing to take as a team manager with context switching? And one of the most extreme things I've seen is like, there's a conference, you're sprinting towards getting something ready for the conference. And so you actually take a whole team and you say you have no on-call duties and you put that on a different team. And that obviously is going to create enormous interruptions for that other team. But if that's aligned with the high-level priorities, then that might be worthwhile. And so I think it's interesting to consider, like, based on what needs the most love, what's the biggest extreme that you're willing to go as a manager to just protect the time of your team.
That's really interesting. That's like the kind of opposite conceptually of stopping the line where, if you have on call that is too on fire and things are getting too interrupt driven, you say, okay, we're going to stop. We're going to say no feature work. Nothing new is getting done because we need to deal with getting things, back down to a much more stable baseline. And I think that's a really good point. And both of those are really important to be able to have those levers to say either, okay, only interrupt work or no interrupt work until we get, the current situation sorted out and can get back into balance.
Yeah, and if I can add, actually, I think that's like some CEO level thinking that Kara's giving us. Like when you manage a larger organization or like multiple teams, you kind of have that at your disposal, right? Like you can like think a bit more broadly about your staff and everything like that. So I think there's a really good point in there about like possibly escalating as well to like more senior leadership if you do have like interruption problems so that they can help you handle the problem. Amador, I think you were going to add something.
I mean, we round about the same thing, right? It's about severity, and it comes again to the processes. We try in our company, we try to set a process that sets that severity based on the impact, based on the number of customers affected. If everything is on fire, is it just a feature request or whatever. This is something that we try to avoid to do it on our side. So we have kind of a template for the people who's reporting to be able to set the priority according to this kind of wizard that asks for some questions and then sets the priority. And according to that, we set the rules. I agree that teams are not boundaries, so we can consider what Kira is proposing, right? At some point, balancing the workforce according to the needs. So perfectly aligned with you guys.
All right. So I'm going to combine my next question with one from the audience because they're kind of similar. So I want to understand the difference in how this is handled in remote and versus in-person teams. And someone from the audience also asked, do you think context switching has changed since many of us have moved to a more remote working environment? Can we learn anything from that? So I'm not sure who has experience with remote versus in-person, but feel free to jump in.
I've done both. And yeah, it is different. I think in person, thinking about, interrupting somebody to ask for help. It's a lot easier to see if somebody is, heads down, headphones on, focus time when they are sitting at the desk next to you versus when they're in their own room, however many hundreds or thousands of miles away. So it can be harder to know, like, oh, this is a really low priority question. I'll just ask them when they get a free moment when you're remote. So you have to find ways like, set your status on Slack to, heads down, don't interrupt unless it's an emergency, please, or something like that. But on the other hand, working remotely, having more teams distributed across time zones, I think it's made it more common for teams to figure out async processes. So having an async stand-up where people can talk about what they did that day at the end of their day, whenever that is, and they don't have to do this whole synchronous stand-up that somehow always ends up taking way longer than it should, that sort of thing. So I think there's definite pluses and minuses to being able to work remotely, and I think we're still kind of figuring out how to maximize the pluses, as it were.
Yeah, something I'd add, I love that, Rin, especially your point about establishing async processes. And I think that's something where, as an engineering manager, as a tech lead, you can, like we were talking about before, set the example of this is how we communicate together. And our team today, I'm in an office, we work hybrid. So some days we're at home, some days we're in the office. And I think that's made our communication in the office actually quite a bit better. So what we do is, like, let's say a user files a bug that's not super urgent to respond to, that's going to go in a ticket tracker and not even in Slack. And then the team just knows I need to keep an eye on Linear, like within a day, I'm going to know that that's there. And then the other thing that and I'm curious to hear for all of you what you do, but we've set some norms around how we use Slack and the expectation of when you respond. So we have an engineering channel. If I have a question in there and I even want a specific person to respond, I will write my message and I'll write their name, but I won't use the mention feature. So they don't get notified, but like I know that they're going to take a look when they're at a pause in their workflow. And then if there is something, of course, that I really want them to take a look at right away, then we'll use the @mention and they'll get that notification and jump in faster.
Yeah, I was about to mention that in fact, at the moment that we start working in remote more often, we improved a lot the way of communicating on a sync. We moved to a more not real life communication. But the fun fact is that when working at home, probably we have a lot more of sources of distraction and interruption, like the washing machine, your cat walking over your keyboard. So we also need to fight with that. This is also a reason for switching context. So it's kind of it represents somehow a more responsibility on our side to keep focused, because again, the source of distractions is pretty huge at home even.
Great. So usually on teams, there's like one person, either it's a very senior engineer or someone who's been at the company for a really long time. I feel like every team has one. On my last team, it was a guy named Mike. Mike had been there forever, and everybody would just ask Mike every question. Um, how can you scale a team to like operate autonomously to avoid bottlenecks like this, where like all of the load is on one person, or like the manager's on vacation that day and they don't really know what to do to handle an incident or an interruption, or even another team asking like, oh, can you help us with this? How do you set your teams up so that they know what to do on their own and the load is more evenly distributed?
Yeah, I think someone on the panel mentioned like accountability before, and I think like if you create an environment within a team that even less experienced engineers feel comfortable holding other senior engineers accountable, because ultimately you're all working towards the same thing, or you should be working towards the same goal. And if one person is creating bottlenecks for the rest of the team, I think for the team to sort of say, hey, this is affecting us, can we figure out another way to move forward? Rather than it sort of just being on the manager's job, which kind of feels a bit different rather than the team raising it. So I think that's one thing. You have to create a safe environment for that to happen. I'd expect like a senior engineer to want to share their knowledge and level up the people on the team so that they never become that bottleneck in the first place. We talked about knowledge sharing, especially with more tenured people or people who have more experience. I think like as a manager, empowering others to feel like they can take ownership over things or have the autonomy to make the decisions within the team together is really important. And then it goes back to like openness and transparency and everyone feeling that they can share what they're working on, what their bottlenecks are, what they need from others. I think will go a long way in sort of helping avoid those types of bottlenecks.
Yeah, I think there's a lot about culturally kind of what you reward. Like take a look at, the career matrices, the career frameworks, what it takes to get promoted. Because I've worked at places and I've had friends who have worked at places in the past who you basically had to do a big project single-handedly in order to get promoted to a certain level, which really just encourages that sort of like silo or kind of knowledge hoarding behavior. Or, if you have a really kind of unpsychologically safe environment where people are worried about getting fired, they might want to hold on to that knowledge and keep it really close to the chest because they want to be so valuable that they can't get fired. So really thinking about what gets rewarded in the organization. And then if you are one of the people who, gets all of the questions, has to worry about becoming a bottleneck, doing what you can to kind of redirect those questions into, more like if somebody drops into your DMs with a question, be like, hey, I'd love to answer that. Can you ask that in the team channel instead? And then you answer that in the team channel so that everyone can see what the answer is. Doing stuff like I will, sometimes just have a thread where I like rubber duck or narrate to myself when I'm troubleshooting something that I'm the only one who knows what it is. So other people can just see my thought processes, but doing that asynchronously so we don't all have to hop on a call if we're not in the same time zone. So just little things that, trying to distribute that knowledge as much as possible to try and relieve some of those bottlenecks.
Yeah, you mentioned something interesting, Rin, which is the fact of people having knowledge as a hostage. I think it doesn't work in the long term for sure. So when someone becomes the only person of contact for resolving something, we have two main problems. The first one is that we cannot avoid this person to be interrupted somehow. And second, probably we have, as Chris was mentioning, right, a knowledge issue that we need to fix. And so what we do in our case is try to block some slots. We call it meet the expert. So, okay, you're an expert. You're the most accountable people, the more knowledgeable people on a given topic. But let's put slots available for everyone. Let's put an agenda so everybody who's interested in that topic can attend it at the same time as you were saying, Rin, and having the knowledge everybody at a time and being autonomous last time. And the third point is the psychological safety. Again, is the other part, right? By having it, people who maybe is just keeping his or her talent in the corner because they are shy or whatever, by feeling secure of sharing ideas without being judged, probably the rest of the team will discover the talent is all around. I mean, not only in one given person because of his or her tenure or whatever, right?
One last thing I'd add, I love all of these points. I think you guys pretty much covered everything. But something that I've found that's pretty helpful on my current team and on past teams is trying to make the culture such that ICs actually have some one-on-ones with each other and build a relationship that way and learn from each other that way. And I've seen it happen pretty organically for the most part. It's definitely easier when you have some time in person. So I think it can be interesting to think, like, as a manager, how can you encourage ICs on your team to have even a virtual coffee if they're working remotely, just so they can start to feel comfortable with each other. And then it's going to come out, oh, I'm currently working on this, and it's really meaty because of this. And suddenly you're starting to have that knowledge flow more organically.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. So this was kind of mentioned in a lot of the answers, and I just want to maybe tie it in a bow. How does psychological safety and good communication play a role on how interruptions are handled, and how even taking that further, how that is able to exist alongside actually delivering on the team's goals? What are some strategies you all employ? What are the benefits?
I can go. Okay, yeah. So some strategies could be just being open in the fact that you communicate your workload, so everybody be conscious on how workload you have before they to ask you more. And first thing is just say it if you feel that way, or in the other way around, we as the managers can provide feedback. Maybe people is not conscious with their best intention. They are doing so because they want to tackle many things at a time, and they are not conscious that this is against productivity. They are not aware of that, and it's our mission as the managers also to guide them on this. And the other way around, if they feel that, just talk to your manager. Say, hey, I think I cannot tackle everything. Just right, remove something from my backlog, or help me to prioritize, as we were saying before, right?
Yeah,
I think this is, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think leading by example here is definitely a big one as a manager. We're it's the same for both ICs and managers. We're doing lots of context switching, and if as a manager, if you're kind of hiding that from your team and they don't realize maybe you have a lot on your plate or what your strategies are or how you're sort of handling things in hopefully a healthy way, then that's going to make it harder on them. So I think being vulnerable as a manager, sharing what you're working on and how you prioritize things, finding the most important things and helping them sort of learn some tools and techniques to do the same thing. But that also creates a safe space on the team that everyone feels like they can bring their whatever they might be struggling with, or whatever, if they're not sure what they should be working on or what their priority should be, and make it okay to question those things. Am I working on the right thing? And if not, can either my manager or the rest of my team help me prioritize stuff? I think it's better to do a few things really, really well than have a ton of things on your plate and you don't feel good about any of them. And I would reckon lots of people feel the same way, and talking about it openly, I think, can create that space.
Absolutely. I was going to say a lot of what you just said, Chris. So thank you. Also, I think this is where the peer one-on-ones that you mentioned, Kara, can be really, really helpful, because especially if you've had kind of a high pressure environment before and are trying to move to one of more psychological safety, people, especially more junior people, might feel more comfortable expressing that they're struggling to appear than they would to their manager, because, they're worried about appearances or job safety or whatnot. And so then that person, the more senior engineers on the team or just even other peers can help them, prioritize their workload or go to the manager and like talk about workloads on their behalf, finding other ways to, spread the load, help even things out, without having to, go to the manager directly can help, kind of bridge the gap when you're still working towards that sort of environment.
Definitely. And one last thing I'd add just for another angle on psychological safety is something that I've seen on pretty much all the teams I've been on is that some people are more comfortable talking things through live, kind of talking as you're thinking and you just do it. And then some people want to think a lot before they talk. And those people tend to be better able to express concerns in writing. So something that we try doing is like for certain meetings, we'll start with like silent writing, and that just lets different kinds of voices be heard more loudly than they otherwise would be.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. That's our time for today. It was super insightful. I actually learned a lot. And of course, it's nice to meet all the panelists. So we're going to head over now to the Lead Dev Slack in the Effective Teams channel. So please head there to continue discussion. We can copy over the questions. And thank you for joining, and we'll see you next time.